Greetings, hempsters. Thanks for tuning in to another hemp episode of HempAware Radio. This is your hemp-entrepreneurial host, Tyler Hoff, and I'm stoked to share with you a new mini documentary called Fibers, The Roots of Industrial Hemp, directed by my special guest today, Victor Kolbe. And I had the chance to briefly chat with Victor and his lovely wife, and they are just so amazing, enthusiastic, inspiring group of people, and they're totally dedicated to living a clean, sustainable, healthy lifestyle. And I was really inspired by our brief chat, and it got me thinking I should have Victor come on to HempAware Radio and kind of share what inspired him to create this documentary. And so before I bring Victor on, just to kind of give you a brief overview of what this mini documentary is, it's essentially the story of fiber, the roots of industrial hemp, and they navigate sort of the properties, the benefits, the applications of industrial hemp, tackling the issues of fast fashion and hemp's association with cannabis, some of the stigmas. And Victor actually goes into the streets and he speaks to campaigners and growers and biologists and lay people that understand what hemp is, or maybe they don't. He kind of gets their perspective. And although it's a short documentary, you can check it out on YouTube. It's packed with great value and can be used as a resource. If you're out there educating your friends and family and customers, you can help spread the word by sharing this documentary, which I'll have a link in the description of the show. And lastly, before we get into this awesome conversation with Victor, I want to remind you that if you are struggling to get traffic and leads and sales for your hemp website or your hemp products, CBD products, cannabis products, whatever it is that you're doing with hemp, if you need help growing your sales and growing your reach, go to hempaware.com and check out our free SEO and website audit. I think you'll get tremendous value out of it and just get some actionable steps that you can use to start getting more traffic and sales for your site. So let's make it hempin'. I want to welcome Victor to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on and appreciate you being here. What's hempin'?
Hey, Tyler. It's a beautiful day today. You know, it's June. We're not even in summer yet, and it's incredibly hot, so I'm enjoying that.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you, connect with other hemp farmers, connect with anybody who's interested in advocacy, because it's an incredible plant. In 2 months, you have something that you can use the bast fiber for construction or textiles or, plastics, different compounds that we could never even work with before. And it's such a high turnover. I mean, that's multiple harvests in a year, and it's not using a tremendous amount of water. It doesn't require really any pesticides, or obviously there are some, you do have to do some weeding. You do have to have some technical machinery. There are some things that you have to do with hemp, but by and large, it's an incredibly environmental option. And I was just shocked as to why it wasn't everywhere. The conversation around cannabis and the people smoking it as weed or using the THC compound, and the Vietnam anti-war movement, and this was all a big distraction for me, because I wanted to know why the chassis of laptops, smartphones, the tables, trash bins, why this wasn't being manufactured with something that we could grow in any country.
Yeah, I appreciate you starting out with that, because I would like to hear how you were led up to being introduced to hemp. Like, what's your background? What did you study? What is your areas of expertise? And then what was that sort of epiphany moment that you had when you were introduced to hemp?
Well, Al Gore, for better or for worse, having an opinion on him, but An Inconvenient Truth, that film was showed to me in my class years ago, back in secondary school in the UK. So I spent most of my life in the UK, but I traveled around a lot in my life. I just remember he was talking about water usage. He was talking about pesticide usage. And, when you look at something like cotton, 16% of the world's pesticides are used just on one crop. Forget soybean, forget corn, forget all of this. I think we use the most amount of pesticides on cotton. And I thought, well, darn, most of my class isn't even wearing cotton. So I think even pre-teen, I was kind of asking myself, okay, so if this isn't an environmentally sound option, why is everyone wearing plastic? Because nylon, technically pure nylon production has gone down, but nylon blends have gone up. So from a young age, I was looking at people's clothing tags and going, wait a minute, cotton isn't that environmentally friendly. But then you're blending it with nylon, which certainly isn't environmentally friendly. It's this petroleum compound derivative. So where's the flax and where's the hemp? So, we're being taught in school to recycle and be environmentally friendly. And yet what we were wearing, the food we were eating, none of our lifestyles as children, none of what I saw the parents doing was reflecting the information that we had. And every time I spoke about hemp, they go, oh, don't want to hear about weed. Just say no to drugs. What about the clothing? So it was a question that was on my mind when I was in school in the UK, and it definitely was growing in my brain when I moved to Wales to start my university degree in international politics and media and communications.
How did you actually learn about hemp? So you saw the inconvenient truth and you started questioning why people are wearing all these sustainable clothing items. And so how did hemp get into your mind? Did you read a book or did you talk to somebody, or how did you find out about it?
I'm going to have to take that back to 2001. So when I was about 5 years old, I started really going online, and it was a lot of dial-up connection, and I could read up on any topic I wanted in the world. And, in between all these articles about the environment and about drugs and, Web 1.0 was very crude, I'd sometimes see a funnily built website talking about hemp with sort of rainbow colors in the background. And I don't think the movement was really as polished as it is today with the resources that we have today to put across the difference between industrial hemp and cotton and nylon. So I think it's just a bunch of different questions coalescing into, well, what is the answer then? And then you look in shops, you go onto the high street, you try to find hemp clothing, you can't really find it. And one question leads to another. You're like, okay, so if this isn't to do with the drug, and this doesn't use much water, doesn't use much pesticides, grows in 2 months, why are none of the adults talking about it?
Gotcha. So you had this sort of seed in your mind of hemp as like this alternative solution to more sustainable clothing, and you came across Web 1.0 websites that were just all crude, kind of a bunch of text. And so you knew what it was. So you knew it was a possible solution, and you saw that nobody was talking about it. You kind of grew up, went to Wales. What did you study in college?
International politics with a focus on, inequality and destitution and poverty. And there's this brilliant book, Planet of Slums. And I would recommend anybody reads this book. It's by a guy, Mike Davis. He used to work for the World Bank, and he gives you statistics like, 2 billion people with contaminated drinking water, 1 billion plus people living in slums. So that's one out of every 8 human beings is in a slum. 2 out of every 8 is not got clean water. 800 million people in India are defecating outside. And, this has to be by design. Either that or people really aren't solutions focused. So I went there with quite an environmental focus in my mind anyway, but I started out doing environmental science, and they weren't talking with policymakers in a solutions base. It was a lot of microscopes, lab analysis, take grid lines of soil and such. And I don't feel like I could make as much progress as I would with advocacy. So I went there to become a documentarian and to get versed in diplomatic conversations so that I could then, kind of push a hemp agenda, push any kind of environmental agenda that I could.
That's awesome. So you studied knowing that hemp would be a part of your application of international politics and documentary filmmaking. You knew that you would kind of merge these 3 elements. And so that sort of has culminated into this documentary that you produced. And I noticed you titled it Fibers, the Roots of Industrial Hemp.
Yeah.
So was there a reason why you specifically wanted the documentary to focus on the fiber side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. Because cannabis weed, it has this leaf, and you see that leaf, no conversation. I noticed there were certain trigger points. I had to use the word industrial, and then try and link that in all my conversations to construction material, industrial hemp, clothing, construction, and 9 times out of 10, I'm deflecting a conversation about THC, or I'm deflecting a conversation about CBD. I don't want to have, it's great and all, but I don't want to talk to people about, oh, my grandma tried CBD, or oh, my brother smoked weed once. No, I want buildings to be retrofitted with this material in damp countries where there's a lot of mold, whether it's in the tropics or up further north. I want whole brand new structures. And then I'm like, well, I need to show people this. So I started looking around. There was a big news story years ago which really kickstarted this, which is about Hemp and Farm. And we go and visit Hemp and Farm in the documentary. So they'd been growing hemp for years, and they had their license revoked. So they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of investment because the government said, no, you need to burn your crop. We just don't, we're revoking it. And so regulations in the UK have been getting tighter and tighter and weirder with multiple logins. And, on the BBC, like industrial hemp farm has to destroy their crop. I thought, well, what if I can contact these guys? Because I really wanted, there was some material on them, but I wanted to combine the hemp farmer with the machinery and the scientists and the construction methods, and link to people in a short format. Because originally, my producer was like, we could aim for 20 minutes. I say, we want it a little bit more compact so that you could show this within a classroom setting. If they've got 45 minutes to an hour, they can watch the film for 13 to 15 minutes, discuss it and contextualize that this is for building materials, this is for clothing, this is a whole different topic that is being regulated as if it was CBD or THC. And yeah.
Cool. That makes sense. I appreciate that. And the documentary is very well put together. It's succinct. You get some really good angles. The interviews with the experts bring some really valuable content. But to kind of go back to your historical research, and when you discovered hemp and saw that this has been used throughout history, what were some of the key historical points that you thought really stood out for you?
Okay, so in the 1920s, 80% of clothing was made from hemp. Now, at least that's true for the United States, but I'm pretty sure that flax and hemp were dominant until the 60s in Europe. And if you combine the chronology of DuPont chemical manufacturing coming up with these sort of, petroleum derivative compounds that they then name nylon, the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act in 1935 and the pushing to lobbyists in Washington of this new synthetic fiber, between 1935 and 1940, suddenly nylon is the big thing and there's a lot of push. People initially said, oh, it's synthetic. We don't want to deal with synthetic fibers. I can grow this hemp, I can make this clothing, and I can pass it down to my great-great-great-grandchildren. It'll still be there. It'll be stronger than ever. We don't want your synthetic nonsense. And I had to go into the history of DuPont chemical processing and hemp fibers and say, okay, they produced a lot for World War II, but they were in backdoor negotiations to say, look, once this war is over, buddy, we want nylon rope. We want nylon stockings. We want women wearing nylon stockings. You're ugly if you don't wear nylon stockings. And I'm bringing this back to Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth because, it got me thinking, and it's been years since I watched it, but I was already thinking a lot about it before they showed it in school. What are these chemicals that people are wearing? And so if you're a company that is producing novel substances from petroleum, really carcinogenic, hexafluoropropylene oxide dimer acid and perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, and you can make exclusive patenting rights for every chemical, then of course you're gonna push this fiber where you get kickbacks from the oil industry, you get kickbacks from the Koch brothers with their crude oil refining, and every time you make one of these chemicals, like look at Gore-Tex today. Look at these sort of waterproofing, wicking chemicals. You can trace a line from sort of farming independence and profitability and the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act, these big oil refining and fabric processors, through to household names like Gore-Tex today, and go, right, this is about money. It's not about whether these fibers are good for us or environmentally friendly or anything. And so I'm digressing a lot, but once you look into cotton, you look into nylon, and then you think, well, hemp and flax grow really quickly. They're very strong. The lignin of the fibers, the bast fibers, secretes an oil that makes it stronger over time. So what's the incentive for making it harder to grow and even criminal to grow? And then it's all about the money. It's not about whether these fibers are good for us. It's money, money, money.
Yeah. So 1920s, it was used almost 80% of clothing was hemp and flax. And then all of a sudden, DuPont invents their crazy chemical synthetic nylons and wipes out the growth of industrial hemp, particularly in the States in the 30s, due to the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act, and creating this sort of catch-22 where you have to grow hemp in order to get a license, but you can't get a license unless you're growing hemp. And so it just made it this crazy, cyclical, challenging situation. And then they invented the word marijuana. Nobody knew what marijuana was. They knew what cannabis was. They knew what hemp was. So I think that added a lot of confusion and got a lot of people that ordinarily would not have got on the bandwagon to demonize this plant. So as far as other historical, is there any other cool, like that's like kind of an unfortunate situation that demonized and banned hemp, but were there any other historical facts that you discovered that you thought was like, wow, this is really cool to find out in the last, couple thousand years about hemp?
Oh, I mean, scrolls, it produces great paper. If you've got an antifungal paper, then you put scrolls into that, it's going to last a long time. I mean, if you go on Etsy today, the marketplace app, you can find linen from the 1700s. So fast fashion exists today because we phased out hemp and because we phased out flax, because if you're a peasant, quote unquote peasant, or arable farmer, or even a lower tier class person back in the day, you had a set of clothes and you could pass them down to your children, your grandchildren, and people knew this from shipping. You'd have rope passed down from ship to ship to ship, or one ship gets scuttled, you've still got all that rope, you pass it to another. So at least people in the merchant navy for thousands of years knew that this was the number one fiber. It floats in water. So it saved people's lives on the open ocean long before we knew how to make, hempcrete.
Yeah, exactly. So you started out by saying you're really passionate about the agricultural aspects of hemp and supporting farmers. And with your background in international politics, how do you see hemp contributing to achieving this global sustainability, the global sustainability goals, particularly as hemp relates to agriculture and industry? Like, what do you see? How do you see hemp kind of a part of that solution?
Well, I'm thinking about Alexander Parks, because in 1862, he created the first, cellulose-based bioplastic. That's 1862. I always say you have to you have to put things in a chronology to get people to think, well, why are we doing this instead of that? Instead of oil refineries handling fidget spinners or phone cases or trash bins, I spoke to some members of the Welsh National Assembly, the Department for Rural, Environmental and Agricultural Affairs, Dawn Bowden. I think she has a different position now, but I said, we are recycling at one of the highest rates in the world, in Wales, which is a part of the United Kingdom. You could take the statistic between 70 to 85%, which is a pretty high rate of recycling. But then you're sending most of this recycling to a facility in Turkey to melt it down, to make it into recycled plastic trash bins, to ship it to the United States for consumer sale. But if you were just focused on bioplastics in the first place, as old as 1862, I mean, you look at the Suez Canal, you look at the Panama Canal, human beings can do tremendous things in the 1800s. So sometime in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, a couple of businessmen got together and thought, we can get kickbacks for refining petroleum, and we can make a lot of different petroleum-based plastics instead of these organic cellulose-based plastics. It's about education, really. When you tell people, look, you're everything from your Tetra Pak to your TV remote to your varnishes can be produced from plant chemicals, then they think, oh, well, actually, I don't really need to be that, oil isn't that big a deal as we've been made out to believe, and then we're not even getting onto biofuels and, oil, algae. So when the conversation goes away from CBD and THC into my house can be constructed from hemp, my smartphone case can be constructed from hemp, and this isn't new technology. We've been duped into a less efficient model. And once we make those changes, 5 or 10 years, governments take a while to make significant planning adjustments if you believe in a non-corrupt government. But it's just a question of a few different 5-year plans, as Stalin would say. And you've got a whole different green economy without much cost to us.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. So that's incredible about Wales and how 70 to 85% of their materials are being recycled, which is impressive. But like you said, if we could start at the beginning and stop the need to have to recycle, then we're not going to have all of this distribution waste and using petrochemicals to transport all of these recycled materials. That's fascinating. So in terms of fast fashion, because I know that's a big topic in terms of pollution, in terms of consumerism and waste, there's a lot of aspects to that I think are crucial to cover. And being that hemp fiber is a huge solution to overcome this, how do you see the future of hemp in the fast fashion industry and maybe other sectors that traditionally rely on GMO cotton and synthetic fibers?
It's almost like when we try to tell the truth, there'll be a propaganda campaign saying, no, it's not as bad as you say it is. And I think if we repeatedly hammer the public with the truth, like, do you want remnants of aldicarb or endosulfan or malathion or pendimethalin? Do you want these chemicals? I mean, we pre-treat cotton seeds with certain insecticides and fungicides. Then we spray the crop again and again and again. We use a tremendous amount of water, and then it's only really growable on like 1.5% of our land, of our arable land mass. So it requires difficult soil, requires a lot of water, but the end result, even, for so-called organic cotton, people are duped by the term organic all the time. It's got different legislative meanings. And often I ask, okay, so let's say tea. How many tea inspectors do you think are employed at any given time? Worldwide, not that many. So this is the reason why if you test organic teas, they tested them in France, Germany, the Netherlands, the European Union, where they have high organic standards, supposedly. Every single type of tea tested that was labeled organic had traces of illegal and legal pesticides. So when you really take the industry with a grain of salt and go, well, probably all of the organic cotton is contaminated to some degree with aldicarb, endosulfan, malathion, pendimethalin, glyphosate residues, ammonia, azo, metal-based dyes, flame retardants, formaldehyde, petroleum scours, softeners. And so you're wearing Alzheimer's, you're wearing Parkinson's, you're wearing endocrine disrupting chemicals, you're wearing bisphenol A residue, you're wearing sterility. fast fashion can't be tackled until the consequences of choosing the wrong fibers is really comprehended by the public. In the same way that moisturizers, shampoos, certain cosmetic products have had to change in the past 20 years because women said, wait a minute, if I use this product, and I say women because, you know, the cosmetics industry is more driven by women, but when you look at deodorizers, for example, aluminum sulfate, people have this awareness now that, wait, if I use this product, I'm going to potentially have a lot of tumors, or I'm going to really damage my hormones, you know, or fertility. When they make that connection to clothing and say, wait, I can skip all that. If I wear hemp or I wear linen, there's no insecticides pre-treated on the seed. There's no fungicides pre-treated on the seed. The end result, whether it's labeled organic or not, is no endosulfan, no Alzheimer's, no Parkinson's, no skin leaching from a hemp or flax product. I mean, that's fantastic for human beings, but they have to understand how toxic it is to choose nylon cotton or nylon cotton blends or rayon, and really get a deeper understanding of the processing involved in synthetic fibers and rayon and such.
Well said. Yeah, that education is foundational. The bigger the message and the more clear we can be about the problem that's present in our world, I think people will eventually wake up, especially since we have a solution with hemp fibers. So yeah, that's really exciting. I look forward to seeing more hemp clothing being worn. And in case you're wondering, I am wearing hemp underwear.
Yep, nice. Your balls are thanking you. It's good for you. It's not going to damage your fertility.
Yeah. So to dive into the documentary specifically, where can people learn more about you and watch the documentary? What are some ways that, let's say somebody wants to maybe hire you to help them create a documentary about hemp? Is that possible? How can people reach you and learn more about this documentary you created?
Yeah, I'm supposing you can drop the link in the description of the podcast for the video. We haven't done too much promo yet because, you know, we were waiting for a second round of awards. We won the Royal Television Society Award for saving the planet, which is great. But we have another award ceremony in 6 or 7 days. Contact me on my email, kolbmalk@gmail.com. That's KOLBMALK@gmail.com. I'm always excited to work on any kind of project, especially talking to people like yourself, talking to people that you know, because it's about education, really. I want to make more films, and I want to, you know, help empower people to say, look, I've heard enough about sheep. I've heard enough about Greta Thunberg or whatever. I've heard enough about distractions. I know that there are thousands of farmers out there who want better machinery. They want more awareness of why they're doing it. And I think if we keep at it, in 10 years, I'll go to any Walmart, I'll go to a Target, I'll go to any clothing shop, and cotton won't even be there. Ideally, cotton will be like a remnant of what it was. Rayon, you know, people have been duped into buying bamboo fiber, and the pulps and processing and chemicals used in that leave you with a fiber that will constantly poison you. So,
yeah, that is a big misconception. That's a good point. I want to kind of expand upon that for a minute, because running a hemp-based company where we offer fabrics, many people ask, do you have a hemp bamboo fabric? And we explain to them, well, we don't, because exactly what you described, bamboo has to go through a very toxic chemical process to break down those fibers and then be kind of sprayed in this chemical form through like what looks similar to a shower nozzle in order to create these fine threads. And it's not actually that sustainable and eco-friendly and healthy. So that's an important point. If you want to expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, you know, people think they're, okay, maybe my cotton might not be organic. I'm not saying organic cotton is the worst of worst things, but in comparison to hemp or linen, I disregard it entirely nowadays, which is hard to do in this. There's not enough hemp fiber out there and such, but there is a lot of this bamboo. So you're still getting carbon disulfide, you're still getting sodium hydroxide, you're still getting various forms of chlorine and super absorbent polymers. So what about our water? We don't damage the water table or use a lot of water with flax or hemp. But people go, oh, bamboo grows really quickly. Great. But I say to people, well, what about bamboo chopping boards? When you look into your life and go, what's the glue in a bamboo chopping board? And then what are the chemicals in bamboo fiber? It's greenwashing. We've managed to greenwash bamboo, and people think of pandas and they go, oh, pandas eat bamboo. Bamboo grows really fast. I'm doing good. Mm-hmm. So we just have to get better at our own propagandizing, which is really us telling the truth, which is, do you want these organofluorophosphate chemicals? Do you want hexamethylene, poly and perfluoroalkyl substances, kidney damage, testicular cancer, liver damage, developmental disorders, because you think it's ecologically friendly? Or do you want what is tried and tested for thousands of years, before these glue compounds existed, before we could make that artificial cellulose pulp? We could skip that. And in a way, we're calling back for simplicity. We want simplicity. We want a fiber that can grow anywhere, and you can construct a house from it, make fiber from it, make plastic from it. Yes, we need heavy machinery. We need threshing. We need a few extra steps because of the strength of the fiber. But that initial investment, which the federal government needs to make by the billions, we need to empower farmers to move to hemp production, take away from the petroleum initiatives and say, well, we don't need your pulp processing factory when it comes to hemp and flax. We need more paper mills. And we can create tens of thousands of jobs that are environmentally friendly by doing this.
Mm-hmm. And careers for people they believe in, that they know they're making a difference in the world, making a living, doing something that is not destructive and harmful to their own health and their family's health and to the community and world at large. But to kind of wrap up our show, I really appreciate your presence and your dedication and commitment to empowering the hemposphere. And just two last questions. One is, how have you seen the overall perception of hemp change in the last 15 years, 20 years that you've been aware of hemp and maybe had conversations with people? Do you find the overall consensus is that people are more open-minded to it now from before, or what do you kind of see the overall perception of this plant when talking about it?
Part of it is the people have changed their opinion on recreational and medicinal THC. So that enabled hemp farmers to kind of go, well, now that you're easing off a bit on the drug usage, how about using it for construction? How about using it for what we used it for thousands of years? I got to bring it to greenwashing, because now you have like companies like Patagonia or Fort Clothing. A lot of people do blends with recycled bottles and stuff. So there's an attempt from the traditional fast fashion industry to assimilate this interest in hemp. And you can watch documentaries galore. You can go on Gaia. You can go on YouTube. You can go on Reddit. You can talk to anybody else in the world nowadays, instead of getting all your information beamed to you from the authorities or the gatekeepers. People are becoming more interested in hemp. 70% of the U.S. population is in favor of legalizing THC, and of course the Fed legalized industrial hemp production in 2018. And there's Kickstarters and new products every single day. So it's a good time. It's a great time. And I feel like there's a lot of momentum building, and people want easy solutions. And I say, well, there are some complex solutions in the world, like lithium batteries, refining lithium batteries, making them more energy efficient, electric vehicles. That's complex. But changing what we wear every day is actually surprisingly easy. Getting more hemp oil, for the amino acids, for the omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, getting more hemp food, more hemp paper mills, more hemp construction materials, and more hemp clothing is like a silver bullet. It's super easy for us to reach certain climate goals if we make that change. We should start there. We should start with what we can do before we think about complex issues, which will take decades.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all about the education and raising awareness and keep spreading the good word, which I think your documentary is going to help with tremendously. So if you had, let's say, the opportunity to stand on a world stage and you could literally speak to every human being on the planet, and you had, say, 30 seconds to share one message with them, what would you want them to know?
We want cleaner water. We want to use less water. We want to work with the environment, work with the soil, not deplete the soil, rejuvenate the soil microbially and in terms of minerals and nitrogen. And we can do this with several growing harvests in a year. Let's try hemp. Let's do flax. It's worked before for thousands of years. It'll keep for hundreds of years. And it's simple and anyone can do it and profit from it. And our children can inherit it for the rest of our lives.
Amen. Well, thanks again, Victor. You're really inspiring. You should be proud of yourself for creating such a cool documentary, and we'll definitely help get it out to the world. And thank you everyone else for tuning into another hemp episode of HempAware Radio. If you have new ideas that you want to share with us on topics that you want us to cover, just reach out, support@hempaware.com. And we'd love to cover whatever topics interest you most. And as a last reminder, if you run a hemp-based business or CBD or cannabis business, just check out hempaware.com and get that complimentary SEO and website audit, and we'll help you get some actionable steps that you can take to improve your business and get more sales. So thanks everyone again for tuning in, and thank you, Victor. It was great to have you.
Thanks, Tyler. Amazing. Great talking to you.